my name is Ofra Shustari. I'm a curator of visual art, and I'm also the founder of Mar'eh, which is an organization that works to bring visual art to the forefront in the Judea and Samaria region of Israel. And our goal is to reveal the creative output of the artists that live here and art in general, to bring it to the region for students and residents and tourists and art professionals as well. We make art accessible and enriching and educational and affordable for all types of people. I'm here today with Marc Provisor. He is a founding member of our artist community and also one of the most active participants, and someone who I work with a lot on Mar'eh. And he's a very talented and experienced painter, and he's been a painter all his life, and he studied at the New York School of Visual Arts in New York, and in his early 20s. And we're going to do an interview today and learn a little bit about Marc and his background and his practice and some of his most recent artworks. So, Marc, tell us a little bit about your background. Where you were born and where you grew up and how you ended up in New York for school and then came back to Israel.
So I was born in Philadelphia and I made Aliyah in 1978. I served in the IDF from 81 to 84 as a paratrooper, experienced the Lebanese war, and afterwards, like so many Israelis, right after you get out of the army, you take a trip. Back then it wasn't really to the Far East, that was still rare. Went to Europe and then went back to the States, originally just to visit with some of my family. And I decided to stay and go to school. Originally I thought I would study marketing, business, like a good Jewish boy, right?
Wow, yeah.
And one of the courses got canceled, but I'm going to stop right there because I have to go back. How did I get started with art was during the Lebanon War. It was very weird to come back home. You're leaving a war and coming back to quasi-normal. I was living in Jerusalem at the time. And there was one particular attack that I was involved in that was quite vicious, and I made it home. The next morning, a friend of mine, my next door neighbor, who was working at Grafos back then, which was like the only art store in Jerusalem at that point, he gave me a set of watercolors. And getting stoned wasn't doing it for me, getting drunk wasn't doing it for me. He gave me these watercolors and I just started expressing the event. Never had any formal training or anything, but I put it out and it made me feel, it relieved me in a sense. And it became a habit that when I would come home, I would express myself just on, just using the colors, form, whatever. So if we go back to when I got to the States and started studying in school, one of the courses in marketing was canceled. And I saw there was a fine arts course, a painting course. And I said, Yalla, let me try it. I fell in love. It was, I can't use words to describe it. I felt, wow, it spoke to me. Yeah. I dropped all the business and started studying more art. And I remember calling my mother up. She was in Tel Aviv at the time. And she's like, how's school and all this? I said, well, I've dropped it all and now I'm studying fine arts. Within 3 days, she was in New York. She wanted to say, like, what are you doing? You know, my God, you got to make a living or something.
Good Jewish mom.
Exactly. But thank God she was supportive, as was my father, saw that this is what I really needed to do.
Right.
And I got very lucky. Started working with the old, going into competitions, started winning some competitions, started getting shows, started selling, which was incredible. Really living the New York art scene, hanging out at the cafes, going to the proper shows, the whole
So why did you stay?
The Iraqi War.
Okay.
I had a show going on in Soho. I had pieces going into one of the museums in New York, and the Iraqi War broke out, and I just couldn't couldn't stay. I really picked up and came back home. I left my apartment full. My friends took care of it.
Wow.
I just couldn't do it. And
you felt the responsibility to be in Israel.
I don't know what word to use, but yeah, I think responsibility covers it. I just couldn't be there anymore. You know, I'm watching the news of rockets hitting. I just couldn't. And I came back, and it was hopefully, I figured, okay, let me continue with my art here. But being here was not the same as being in New York with the art. So I would just, you know, I had to find a job. And in the interim, then I got married. And, well, let's say I opened up a construction business, was making money there. I would paint at night. And eventually I got handled back into the security world by the mayor of this community, who told me it was only 2 hours a day. We'll give you a studio for free, because I was painting at nights anyway. They said, you'll be able to do that. And it was not 2 hours a day. But I did go back to painting. Again, the art business here in Israel was very different.
Right.
And really just to continue, you know, that was in 1996. And eventually the Intifada started, which was very busy for me.
So let's talk more about that day job that you have. You know, it's an unusual day job, right?
The day job, right.
So normally an artist is a teacher, or maybe they're also a graphic designer.
Or a waiter.
Or a waiter, yeah, sure. Yeah. But you were the head of security.
I was the head of security for, at first, the community and the region. And that basically means I was the first responder. So any problem that would have happened, I was the guy going out there. And obviously before the Intifada, it was... whether it be stones, a little riot here and there, maybe a Molotov cocktail, a bomb, or whatever, light, you could say, but it was very interesting because it was adventurous, because I was dealing with also the PLO security. There was a lot of interesting things. Yeah, it wasn't the standard, but I would still manage time to paint. In fact, there was a great story. I would paint at that time late morning or something, and I really need to paint. It's something that I need to do. It keeps me balanced, if you will. Right. And they would start throwing stones, and it would blow my mind, and I would flip, and I would drive into the village and create all sorts of mayhem. And I get called in by the civil administration, who's calling in my parallel on the Palestinian side and saying, what's going on? You guys were making it peaceful, everything was working out. And I said, they keep on doing what I'm painting. I can't not paint. You're blowing my mind. And an order goes out into the Palestinian village: don't throw rocks or make any problems between the hours of 10 and 3. Marc needs to paint. And it was hilarious. But this is what happened. That, they realized it was great. And I said, hey, I'll give you a painting. Thank you. I finished painting. It's like, okay, can we throw stones now? All right, I'm here. Anyway, something. It was so abstract, but it.
How did that affect your painting? This job.
That was not too much at first, because it was, like I said, lightweight. I understood it. It came out in just a few ways, but the Intifada was what really blew me away. I've been credited as being one of the security chief with a lot of terror under my belt. I mean, during the Intifada, I was handling, in the beginning, 1 to 2 shooting attacks a day, seeing some of the biggest nightmares that people can imagine. And I wanted to paint it. And it was just almost too much, until a certain incident around here, which was horrific. I'm not going to necessarily go into the details, but it was the last painting I made. That's when I stopped painting. It was the death of 2 parents. I'm not going to get into the details, but I actually went graphic on the painting. Yeah. And I just couldn't paint anymore. It was too much. Yeah. And I stopped. I simply stopped painting. I couldn't do it anymore. The Intifada continued, and it was constant terror. A lot of people don't realize how much security chiefs deal with.
Yeah. And painting was sort of your outlet to deal with it, and then you stopped.
I didn't have an outlet anymore. No, it just became. I became the security guy with everything and anything that came with.
How did you come back then to painting after that?
I guess it was a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, about a couple of years ago, I just said I can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still involved in security, but I said I have to make time. I have to start getting these things out. And I was honestly the trauma. I don't like to say the post-trauma because it's become such a buzzword now.
Right.
But it has its ups and downs. You know, you have your memories, you have this, you relive things. But I was going through a very, very tough period. I was beginning to relive the attacks as just on my normal drive. Most people say, okay, we're driving to Jerusalem to go out to go to do something. For me, it became a very tough experience. I called up a friend who was a psychologist, and we started talking. I said something bad. I'm getting some red flags. We're going to have to talk. I started reading more, and then I decided this one particular event in Wadi Haramia, where there were, it was the anniversary not too long ago, there were 10 people killed, 12 injured, and I was the responder. My best friend there, thank God he didn't die, but it was awful. It was awful. And that was one of the main things that I was reliving, and I decided to paint it. After I painted it, it went away. It stopped. The visions and all of that stuff, the angst, driving through an area of something, it all stopped. And I started releasing once again through painting, through the color, and it was great. And it wasn't just obviously the dark side, but the beauty that I see. I mean, one of the perks of my job, like I said, I still work with security. I have to figure out how to stop attacks, how to protect communities. It's very different, and I look at it differently. But then I started painting a lot of the beauty that I saw in the land and the way I perceived it, and it was wow, it was great. And I then set that goal. I said, when I hit 60, which isn't too far off, I that's it. No more security, just painting. And it's been COVID has been great for me. All the lockdowns. And, even though I have a license to go anywhere, but still I'd say, and I've just been producing a lot, and I started selling and showing again, and it's been, wow. It's, I'm getting back to who I was.
So let's talk a little bit about your current paintings. We can get up actually if you want, and we can walk over there. I want to talk about some of the things that we see here in the background.